Good morning, and thanks for joining this session. My name is Falzon. I'm a partner at Camilleri Preziosi, a law firm based in Malta. I'm here representing our firm as well as FinanceMalta, an organization intent on promoting Malta as a financial services and fintech center in Europe and the world. My session today covers Malta's evolution in the fintech industry. And in this session, I'll be attempting to cover the following points. So to start with, Malta's moves in the DLT industry, initiatives in the fintech regulatory sandbox, measures which MFSA has taken, horizon scanning, looking at Malta's fintech strategy going forward, and that in the context also of the EU digital finance package, and finally closing off with a taste of what particular initiatives and benefits are applied to Malta. So Malta's pioneering moves in the DLT industry are initially represented by the setting up of a regulatory framework back in November 2018, consisting of the three acts identified in this slide: the Virtual Financial Assets Act, which introduces and regulates a new class of asset known as the virtual financial asset, the Malta Digital Innovation Act, the MDI Act, which establishes the Malta Digital Innovation Authority, so an authority specifically responsible for developing and implementing regulatory standards and ethical guidelines relating to the development and use of innovative technologies and DLT, such as DLT and AI. Finally, the Innovative Technology Arrangements and Services Act, which introduced the concept of voluntary recognition and certification regimes for innovative technology. So the ability of having an innovative technology actually vetted, audited, approved by an authority which is competent specifically in this particular area. And the underlying drivers of this regulatory package may be said to be those of instilling market confidence through investor protection, market integrity, and financial stability measures. All of these coming within the ambit of one single regulatory framework drawn up by an EU member state. Let's focus for a moment on this innovative means of fundraising and the possibility of providing certain services regulated by the VFA Act. IVFAOs, so the Maltese version or form of ICOs, are initial virtual financial asset offerings and allow for the admissibility to listing and trading of virtual financial assets on DLT exchanges, subject to the issuer of such VFAs registering a white paper with the MFSA. Such white paper to be drawn up according to the prerequisites of the VFA Act, which to a large extent can be said to be modeled on the prospectus regulation, obviously with the necessary adjustments specific to the technological dimension of the underlying format or features of the asset, as well as factoring in the particular risks or features which may be associated with this type of asset. The virtual financial asset service providers are those who provide certain services in connection with VFAs, such as the reception and transmission of orders, custody solutions, or operating of VFA exchanges, as well as the others indicated on this slide. Most important to keep in mind is that in order to provide such a service, the entity in question would be required to obtain a VFA service provider license from the Malta Financial Services Authority. the competent authority insofar as the regulation of VFAs and VFA service providers is concerned. So what are the benefits? What's the fuss about this regulatory regime? Is it necessary? And the answer we have found since the inception of this regime is that when one understands and appreciates certain particular features or attributes of this regime, it becomes abundantly clear that that this is something which proves attractive to a number of issuers and service providers who want to be stamped or associated with the approval or validation of a regulator, as I said, of a fully fledged EU member state. So these attributes include legal certainty and robustness, so having a clear and comprehensive means of classifying DLT assets through the introduction of what is called the financial instrument test, effectively a test which would assess the features of the VFA asset, the token itself, with a view to assessing whether this qualifies as a virtual token, or if not, as a financial instrument, if not, as electronic money, and should none of those, should the criteria of that token not meet the requirements necessary for it to qualify as any of those three, then it would qualify as a VFA, a virtual financial assets, which would thus be regulated by the Virtual Financial Assets Act. This legal certainty, which this set of criteria and the evaluation mechanism which this gives rise to, creates a level of assurance which in the past may have said to have been somewhat lacking insofar as the classification, the classifying of tokens available, freely available in certain markets. In addition, other features of this regime include the introduction of sound regulatory principles and governance, which carry with them high standards of market entry, aimed at ensuring that market players are fit and proper, so allowing only those who should really be allowed to have access to the public and investors at large. AML, internal governance, and procedures and policies and controls and checks on those being up to the standard required of a licensee, which would be considered to be, or an issuer which would be considered to be fit and proper. And also introducing the concept, the gatekeeping role of a VFA agent. So an agent which is authorized by the authority to provide certain services in this field, and those who are also required by law to ensure the ability and the fitness and properness of these prospective issuers or VFA service providers to actually present their white paper and proceed to market in the case of issuers, or to provide one of the services which fall within the Act. Malta's regulatory framework then also is built on taking an innovative approach to RegTech, including through the introduction of new concepts such as IT audits and live node audit requirements, as well as providing guidelines on IT, cybersecurity, and outsourcing arrangements. Again, always with the intention of increasing the legitimacy and transparency in this area. Apart from setting up that regime, the Malta Financial Services Authority has also set up a fintech regulatory sandbox with the intent of enabling tech companies, as well as, in particular, startups, who, prior perhaps to taking the plunge into a fully fledged licensed regime, may be looking at testing their ability of falling within that regime, and therefore operating for a period of time within the financial services sectors under certain prescribed conditions without as yet being fully licensed. And the ability to subscribe or to participate in that sandbox is dependent on a number of criteria, in the principal ones being innovation. So this is something which could result in a new business model or application or process. Need, that there is a genuine need and objective for testing the solution within a controlled environment. A benefit, so that there are identifiable direct or indirect benefits to consumers of financial services and the wider financial services sector. And readiness, the readiness for testing within the sandbox, and assurance that the applicant has adequate resources to operate throughout the duration of the sandbox. And here's a quick image, visual representation of the 6 stages of the sandbox cycle, going from proposal stage to being selected by the authority, formally submitting an application, in going through a testing stage in an open and cooperative and honest environment and relationship with the authority, reaching eventually evaluation stage, and finally exit, the point in time at which the applicant would either decide not to continue with the sandbox or whether to implement an exit strategy, which would imply either discontinuance or to continuance of a solution outside of the sandbox. The fintech strategy adopted by the MFSA looks towards driving innovation, enhancing access to financial products, increasing competition, promoting market integrity, delivering better customer experiences, and contributing to the long-term success of the Maltese Financial Services Centre. And clearly, there are a number of significant parallels which can be drawn here between Malta's own fintech strategy and that which and the strategy which underlines MiCA, which I will be getting to shortly. And here is a brief representation of what Malta's 6-pillar fintech strategy is based on. So initiatives in regulation, in creating an ecosystem, in setting up and encouraging collaboration in the creation of the appropriate architecture. International, so looking across jurisdiction beyond our borders, knowledge, cultivating deep talent pools and stimulating research and collaborative ideation, and security, so an environment that is resilient to cybersecurity threats. And here is a list of the various initiatives which this strategy has given rise to so far, foremost amongst which is the enactment of the regulatory regime and regulatory sandbox, which we touched upon, but also the adoption of RegTech and SupTech in the MFSAs and in other competent authorities in Malta in their day-to-day operations. Moving beyond very briefly, I'm sure this is going to be the subject of further sessions in today's conference, but it's a must really to make reference to them. The EU FinTech Action Plan, which was launched in 2018, is a multifaceted action plan which looks at supporting the growth of the fintech industry, enhancing consumer choice, looking at protection of investors and promoting alternative and innovative means of funding, and ultimately supporting the adoption of technology in financial services. And here is a list of a number of the initiatives which have been taken and those as well which are in the pipeline. Of particular interest, I would say, are MiCA and DORA. MiCA, which has just gone through a consultation process. There are no clear no clear end date in sight as yet. However, it is a very much a live process at this point. And here, Malta, with its 4+ years of experience of operating in this field within a regulated environment since for the last couple of years, but it's been around 5 years since the whole ecosystem started being devised and brought, and has been brought to where it is now. Insofar as AI and big tech is concerned, it's also, very fresh hot off the press. On the 22nd of April, so just last week, the EU Commission published its proposal for a regulation aimed at harmonizing the regulation of AI in the EU. And from Malta's perspective, what is particularly interesting is the fact that the concept of certification of innovative technology arrangements, including DLT-based solutions, smart contracts, and AI systems, is not something new. It's not something which Malta waited for the EU Commission's proposal to draw up. It is something which is actually implicit in the introduction of the Malta Digital Innovation Authority Act and the Innovative Technology Arrangement and Services Act, which provides, amongst other things, for the concept of systems audit carried out by auditors as authorized by the Malta Digital Innovation Authority. Finally, just to touch on what incentives and other benefits may attract prospective issuers of cryptocurrencies, as well as providers of crypto-related services, but also those who may wish to be looking at registering their innovative technology or service within the ambit of a EU member state. I have listed here a number of initiatives which I consider relevant to Malta as a financial services and fintech center, including its ability to have been the first mover in the DLT industry and in the certification and systems auditing spaces. Malta has a well-established financial services industry with experienced professionals in the field, including those who have made the transition to the fintech space. It's a cost-effective jurisdiction with an attractive, competitive corporate taxation system, and has regulators, both the MFSA and the MDIA, which are open to innovation and open to taking a collaborative approach with prospective applicants. I hope that you found this presentation useful and at least a brief taster of what Malta may have to offer. Should you have any questions, these are my details. Thank you to Fintech Junction for having me, and I wish you all a good day and an excellent conference.